I'm your host, Felipe Rose, and welcome to the Disco Chronicles and Beyond. This podcast is about the disco era, the music, the culture, and the impact it's had on the world today, and why disco is still so hot. After successfully touring the world for over 4 decades as one of the original co-founders and members of the world-famous Village People, selling over 100 million records, this disco king truly knows a thing or two about the disco era. So sit back and relax and enjoy my conversation with my guest today. Hi everyone, I'm Felipe Rose and welcome to the Disco Chronicles. First of all, let me thank all of our subscribers, and I'm trying to answer as many questions as I can. If you have questions also, please feel free to put them in the comments section. And in the meantime, I'm going to tell you today what the show is about. Marsha Stern. The name may not be familiar, but she knows everything about disco. From being my roommate in New York before Village People to graduating and growing up and becoming one of the biggest lighting technicians in the country. And so therefore, her point of view looking down was much different than mine from the stage looking out. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring in Marsha Stern. Hello, Marsha.
Hello. How are you, Felipe?
Well, I'm great, and I'm so happy to see you. My question to you, Marsha, why does disco still have such a grasp on our culture today?
I honestly think it's quite simple. It was very happy music. It made us smile.
It did.
It gave us joy.
Oh.
Most of the songs, when you listen to the lyrics, very few were about heartbreak or heartache.
Right, not a lot of that.
None were about violence. I do never, ever, ever remember hearing a disco song, except perhaps Walk the Night, that was a little on the heavy side.
That was the Scat Brothers.
Bam! But
right.
There was never a song that said, you know, I'm gonna mess you up, or
no,
yeah, you up, or anything that was.
Or you took my man.
That yes, but not I'm going to shoot you because
no, right. So, no, it was happy music. It was happy music.
And I think that is probably something that pulls on the emotions of every human being alive. And there's only so much negativity that I think the human being can stand. And this year gave us a truckload of it. So if we could find a little bit of happiness and a little bit of joy, even by just putting on some tunes and bopping around the house while we're dusting or doing our vacuuming, you know, if it puts a smile on your face. And
it really does. It does.
I think that I would like to think that that's one of the reasons why it's had a comeback now. And I'd also like to think that because it's really the foundation of what we know today as dance music or EDM or whatever subcategory you want to put it on.
I've gotten the same answer and response from even just in conversation with friends, you know, just off the cuff to ask them. And they pretty much give me the same answer. They say because it was happy. And if I'm feeling a little down and, oh my God, looks like I'm not going to see anybody again for another month because this thing will never end, disco music. And that's one of the great reasons why it's had such a huge comeback, because people gravitated to that. Just to like off the cuff, just to let the listeners and the viewers know that Marcia and I, we were roommates. She was my first roommate in New York. I was your first roommate.
You were in my little studio apartment. I rescued you from a bad situation, I remember.
Before Village People, that's how long we know each other. Okay,
long time.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It is. We had some very great times, and also with Village People. And at the time, as you know, I was in the music business on various levels. I think when we first met, I worked at Howard Bloom doing publicity. And after that, jumped over to Can't Stop and was working with you and the whole gang at Can't Stop. Remember me at that little front desk doing the ticker tape,
Yes.
all the international stuff.
Right.
Yeah, no, we've been together since my first days in New York.
What I want to emphasize is your technical experience with lighting. Like, when did that come around? I knew that for me, I knew when, but for the listeners and the viewers, that your perspective, your knowledge, and how you got into that in the clubs, your lighting technical abilities.
Well, that's a hard question to answer because there really wasn't a distinct path that I went on. It wasn't a mission, if you will. In 1979, I was working with the Joe Long Sound, as you know.
Okay, right, all right.
We just released Liquid Gold.
Oh my God, love that song.
Spring, we had finished the Gershwin Strutters, The Man I Love, Embraceable You, and the Gershwin Strutters album, and we had finished a couple of other things, and boomity boomity boom, it all kind of blew up in our face, and we were dropped. The record deal was dropped. I no longer worked with Joe, and I found myself no longer working as a record producer or assistant producer, associate producer, whatever you will. No longer doing that, but I knew the music. I had a musical skill, and I used to hang out at the Cock Ring because before I did record production, I was a East Coast disco representative for Areola. So I had good relationships with all the DJs. And I would say every night a different friend of mine was DJing at the Cock Ring.
So you would go upstairs.
I would go up and do the lights. And Frank, the manager.
But just like that.
Tommy Kazalka did the lights on the weekends, and he let me do a few of the weekdays. And Wayne Scott would play on Tuesdays, and Howard Merritt would play on Mondays, and Phil Alexion on Thursdays, and yada yada. And Richie Rivera played, and I would go during the week.
Oh, Richie, another great talent.
I'd go during the week, and for $35 and all the booze I got to stand next to the DJ in that little booth. As you know, you go up the little ladder.
Right.
And the thing that was really interesting about that, and I pointed this out when I did a webinar for Martin Professional, the lighting manufacturer, Tommy Kazalka was quite brilliant, and he was an engineer, and we did not have elaborate lighting controls like we have today, and certainly it was all analog, not digital. And he took an old Olivetti keyboard from a typewriter, and some of the keys were missing, but the ones that were there, you would push a key like you would push letter T.
Yeah.
It would hit a relay that would turn on a pin spot. And then there was an R would turn on a pair of pin spots on the mirror ball, and S would turn on a pin spot on a column. And literally, you would push a button and get a light. And that was the lighting console. That was something that Tommy had created. And that was the first non-professional, professional lighting job I had. And around the same time, which we're talking late 79, early 80, I started working at New York, New York.
Oh, another great club.
I was hired to work at New York, and
John Addison, wasn't he?
John Addison, Maurice Brahms, and Fifi.
Yeah. And fixtures there.
It was pre-Bonds.
Yes. Pre-Bond on Broadway.
And Casey Jones, those were like the two main DJs that I remember working with. And Richard Sabala was a barback at the time.
Jesus.
And I remember Richard used to come up to the booth and pester me. Please teach me how to do the lights, Marcia. Please show me how to do the lights. And I did. I showed him how to do the lights. And, it just kind of stuck. For a while after Roy passed, I was doing some DJing and I was doing some lighting, but after time, the lighting gigs just stuck, and I knew the music, so I could essentially do visual choreography.
Yes.
I was adept enough at the technology, and my mind is enough of a mechanical and an engineer's mind that I had an understanding of what was going on, and this was particularly helpful when we got into computerized lighting.
Yes.
By the mid 80s, the Red Parrot had a computerized console, and Ken Billington, a very famous Broadway lighting designer, put the system in, and he used then what was a brand new computerized console to control the lights. And then the Palladium, of course, which had Verilights and all robotic lights.
Oh my God, that was an insane
touring,
place.
rock and roll touring board by Avo, and I was very, very lucky to have been at the right place at the right time, have had the opportunity, and then have had the aptitude to follow up with it. I mean, it would have meant nothing if I had been in that place and then I couldn't figure out what to do.
How important is lighting to a DJ?
I think that ultimately lighting is important to anything and everything. And the reason, in my humble opinion, is because it's subliminal.
Yeah.
Nobody walks out of the party, nobody walks out of the show humming the lighting cues. It's a fact.
I have to write that. That's good. You're right. That's true.
However, if I am orchestrating a party and I want the crowd to go from one side of the room to the other, I can direct it by illuminating a path that people will follow just because. You can also control the intensity of the crowd. You can raise the intensity or tone it down, both by color and movement of light.
Right, absolutely.
So I think the fact that it's subliminal means that it always has an effect. Whether the DJ or the dancers are aware of it remains to be seen.
I remember that at Studio 54 that if the lights were up bright, people wouldn't dance. They were self-conscious. So some lighting directors, or whoever was doing lights at one particular evening I was there, they brought the lights down low, and then all of a sudden just people started trickling onto the dance floor. It's not because I think that the lights up bright made them self-conscious. And then once they lowered the lights and the floor filled up. So lighting was important.
Well, and exactly what I'm saying, it is a subliminal thing. It's not like you're standing there with a sign. It's kind of like when, but by the same token, you are making something that is either attractive or not as attractive. Conversely, I remember doing one night with live bands at the Palladium, and it was packed. It was a Latin night. We had an all-star band in there that was like, if the Palladium held 4,000 people, we had 4,200 people inside. I had never seen so many people in there, and the intensity of the room, the intensity of the people was mounting, and the emotions in the room were mounting to a fever pitch. And of course, the band was doing what they were supposed to do, which was to excite the crowd.
Yeah.
We had so many people there. I was getting extremely nervous. And I didn't really know how to tone it down, and I didn't want to take away from what was going on. So, and at the Palladium, we had the Verilights, which moved. They swept and went up.
Swept around, right, back and forth,
I stilled all the lights. They just were pointing down. Maybe I spun a little bit, but I pointed them down in a pattern, and I turned off every red or white light in the house, and I had bathed everyone in blue. Blue is emotionally a very calming color. So subliminally, even though these people were very, very excited by the music, and I didn't do anything to take away or tamper with the emotion they were feeling from the music, all the excitement was now directed to the stage and to the performers, and all the lighting that was on the people was a little more sedate. And I found that just kind of leveled the emotional pitch of the room. I'd never seen that many people in that space before.
I experienced the same thing at Paradise Garage, where Larry Levan, literally they raised the temperature in the place, and the lights were red, and then suddenly we're all dancing and we're sweating, and he decides that he's going to just stop all that intensity and play Love Unlimited's orchestra, the suite.
Right.
And suddenly the air conditioning came on and he bathed everyone in blue lights and he just like cooled us all down. I was freaked out. That literally happened like from 1 minute to the next in the room.
He was the only DJ I knew that also insisted on having some lighting controls in his booth. Whereas every other DJ booth I worked in, every other DJ I worked with, if the DJ wanted, like, I'm getting ready to do this, give me a blackout, or I'm going to do a transition, use a cold ending and go into a long intro or whatever, or just like you're saying, you know, stop the music, boom, and go into a complete change of tempo. Usually a DJ will give a heads up to the lighting person.
Yeah.
So you do that in sync. Larry was the only DJ I know that actually had lighting controls in his booth that would override the lighting person. And if he wanted a dead blackout in the room,
he got it.
He literally put his foot on the button, and that was the end of that. And the lighting guy could be pushing the buttons all he wanted, and he wouldn't get a damn thing.
Were there any DJs that didn't like your lighting work?
If they did, they didn't tell me.
Which of the clubs in New York, in your opinion, do you think had the best lighting?
It's a hard question to answer because there was so many unique aspects.
And different, right?
Exactly. I think that of that late 70s era, obviously Studio 54 knocked it out of the park because they had one thing that other clubs didn't have. And I didn't work at Xenon, so I didn't know for a fact, but I don't believe that it was a theater. I think it was just a tall old building. Whereas 54 was a theater and had a flywheel system and could incorporate drops that flew in and flew out. And so that actually used proper theatrical elements to create what it was that they were able to do, that they could have so many different backdrops and scenic pieces that would live up in the ceiling. And you had a few people on flywheel and you'd call someone to bring it in, just like we had at the Palladium. That was a real theater. We incorporated the real aspect of the theater, and we had like 5 backdrops and a variety of things
that was huge
and fly out. Yes. But I think that was unique. I think clubs like Barnum and Xenon and other clubs kind of mimicked what
and Bonds
in many ways. Bonds is unique because it was just so gargantuan.
It was what was it? Was it a department store?
Yeah, Bonds department store.
Yeah, okay. And the staircase was massive.
Yes, but it didn't really have a light show as we knew it in other clubs.
No.
So it was more gimmicky. It had a blimp. It had dancing waters. It had the smoke machine that blew rings. That was the Camel smoke machine from the top on 45th Street. They had inflatables that popped out of the ceiling, but they didn't have a light show.
No, they didn't. But that was the beauty of, during that heyday of disco, that was the beauty of New York, that you can go to one club and then on Friday night, the weekends would actually start Wednesdays. And then Friday, Thursday night was Little Friday. So you literally could have a different experience in every club. I know I did.
Yes.
And you would go to different clubs and it was always different because of the lighting, the way the music was played, and the DJ, what he brought, the crowd that followed him. It was always, you never knew what to expect.
You're absolutely right. There were so many different clubs that offered completely different environments. There was, the elegance of Visage was quite elegant when it opened. The Red Parrot, when it opened, was very unique in 3 aspects. One, the lighting was designed by a Broadway lighting designer. 2, it had a proper sound stage and catwalk lighting, sound mixing, front of house monitor, blah, 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 built into it. It wasn't like Palladium where when we did a live show, we had to bring in stages and bring in C-Factor with a sound gear and bring in that system. Red Parrot was unique. It was all built right in. And it was unique also in that it did swing music and had an orchestra.
Going back to, you had the Palladium. The Palladium MTV started to really like the Palladium a lot.
That's an
And they were
understatement.
filming there a lot, weren't they?
That's kind of an understatement.
Well, every time I was there, the
Felipe,
MTV is here.
MTV really did love the Palladium. And as you asked me,
Why? Why?
well,
Why?
you asked me about clubs that were unique. The Palladium was probably the most unique club technologically that compared to any other club at any point in time in the mid 80s in New York because of the lighting more than anything. The sound system was a Richard Long sound system that in and of itself
Yeah.
made it top drawer. The lighting was something that not only had it never been seen before in clubs, but it was the only permanent installation anywhere in the world. The only place you could ever see Verilights up to that point was if you went and saw Genesis or a couple of other bands on tour. That's what they were built and designed for. So that made it very, very unique in and of itself. And of course, the Saint by virtue of its design.
Okay, now many of the listeners and viewers, they don't know about the Saint, and the Saint was not mainstream. But
No, it was not.
The
It was, well,
Saint,
neither was the Paradise Garage. Both
not,
of them
not,
had
neither
clubs.
was the Paradise Garage. I went to the Saint. I took Freddie Mercury to the Saint. He fell in love with it, and we were never friends again. He just got lost. He just, I'm leaving. It's 7 o'clock. Freddie, I'm leaving. Well, darling, go. I'm not. He would leave at 10 in the morning because I went and partied there. Please explain once again the Saint.
It was a private club that was started by Bruce Mailman. And at the time, there were two, well, Paradise Garage had a gay night, was predominantly a gay private club.
Right.
Also had a straight night, Friday.
Members only, yes.
Members only, members and guests. 12 West was predominantly gay as well, members and guests, but they were a little looser on their door policy.
Right, they were.
Private gay club, which was Flamingo, and they were very strict. Members and guests, period, end of story.
Now you hit the higher usher. Those are the high upper echelon of the gay clubs in New York City.
Well, those are the private membership.
The private membership
I'm not
clubs.
going for the ones that anybody off the street could walk into. There was the Charlies, and there was the Barefoot Boy, and there was the Cock Ring, which by then was called the Ring, and you know, Uncle Charlie's, and on and on and on.
But describe for the viewers and listeners what the Saint was.
Well, the Saint was built also in a theater. It was built at the site of the old Fillmore East.
Right.
And everything, the only thing that really existed from the original building was the proscenium arch, the fly rail area that was above were the dressing rooms, which were converted to the locker rooms, and the shell of the building, the friezes that were on the exterior and part of the original balcony. The orchestra, the mezzanine, everything else had been leveled out, and there was you would walk in, and the main level or the base level of the club was for lack of a better term, lounge space, and you walked up a flight of stairs to what was
all metal grating.
All metal. Was a geodesic dome, complete semicircle. That was basically a huge open area that was from ground to 5. It was floor to ceiling open. If you went up one flight of stairs to the dance floor, that was essentially the second floor. And the dome itself was this big and was maybe floors from floors 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then if you were in the balcony, you would be at was essentially the 5th floor or the 6th floor, and you could look down into
on everyone in there. And it was like the planetarium.
Well, Greg Ackerman was the guy who designed and built. He was a brilliant engineer, bridge engineer. He built the planetarium, which was modeled after the Hayden Planetarium.
Right.
The surface of the skin of the dome was such that if you were inside the dome, it acted as a reflective property to the lighting that was inside. If you were outside the dome, it was perforated so you could actually see through it. So if you were in
You
the
could say,
balcony,
yeah.
you could see people dancing on the dance floor. But if you were inside the dome dancing, what you saw was the light show on the inside of the shell. You didn't see the balcony.
But you did from time to time would see like a planet go by.
Well, that was
there were projections.
Those all came from the star machine, which was a little like flying an airplane. You had hemispheres, you had latitudes, longitudes.
Come on, Marsha. Marsha, break it down, girl. Come on.
There was a pedestal that held 90% of the lighting that was in the middle of the dance floor.
Right.
The center of that spun around very slowly was the star machine, and that was the center of the thing, of the mushroom, for lack of a better term. And then the perimeter of this had various pin spots and lights, and that's where the tweeter arrays were.
You know, Halloween, I don't know if you ever went there for Halloween. Halloween parties were extravagant. And then, of course,
there was extravagant.
Every night was, but I loved Halloween. You know, that was my favorite time. But being that I had a membership, it was really nice when I had friends that would come to New York to visit, like Freddie, and I want to go to the Seine, and it was such a privilege for me to bring people as a guest with my card, with my membership, and take them and give them an experience that they never forgot.
So, you felt privileged being a member. How privileged do you think I felt being a charter member, and a female at that? I think there were somewhere in the vicinity of about 1,800 members the first year, charter members. Then there was something like 40 women. It was a membership club, and the core members, the charter members, were the people that management decided they wanted to have as the foundation. And from this next year on, we could sponsor members. It was a very, very special place in and of itself. And back to your original question, which was what was the best? I think the answer to that is there were many that were bests. It depended on what year
I like that.
you were talking about, and also what your genre it was. I mean, in 1978, I was very happy to be at Max's Kansas City as well.
I was there.
I was very happy at Hurrah, listening to rock and roll or watching Divine. I was very happy at movies. So, there were
that's where we had our debut performance forever. Hurrahs, and then Saturday night, what was it in Brooklyn? So the club where they filmed Saturday Night Fever? Odyssey. So we had a double night. We our first performance in New York, Hurrahs, and then Saturday night at Odyssey, and they took a look at the group, that crowd, and said, "Oh boy, what's this?" But they loved the music, so there you go.
Well, there was just, New York was so rich in so many different art forms, and it was in many ways, it was very much of a renaissance. I mean, you had all kinds of stuff going on the Lower East Side that was so groundbreaking then. I mean, this was when Keith Haring was just starting to pencil.
We just had a birthday of Keith Haring. Yeah,
exactly. Or when Blue Man Group. Remember when they
the
Club to Nowhere, and they put the stanchion up on First Avenue in front of an empty lot, and they do the Club to Nowhere. I mean, that was such a time of, I think, amazing creativity. And it didn't matter where you went. You could have a different experience every night of the weekend, not just within the disco genre or different clubs within the disco genre. You could even step outside of that. And New York was pretty exciting then. I really feel very grateful to have been there.
So Marsha, what's up now for you? What's going on?
You had I just launched roythode.com, and I'm just kind of taking a step back. My lighting business, any potential that I had, any segues that I was doing from my position with Acclaim Lighting, which is a division of a DJ group. It was the architectural lighting manufacturer division. Segueing from that to to some other programming and a little more entertainment oriented work, all got stopped cold, dead in the
Same
water.
with all of us.
And unfortunately, the entertainment business, as you well know, is only now beginning to plan comebacks 3, 4, 5, and 6 months from now. You know, it kind of stopped me dead in my tracks. I had gone to New York, as you said, for the opening of the Brooklyn Museum, and had just finished some training on some new lighting software that had come out, the Obsidian line from Elation Pro, and I was coming back from New York, getting ready to sink my teeth, and then nothing. So I've been kind of reassessing and enjoying the time and trying to reevaluate. It's given me time to work on the Roy Thode thing. I really do want to leave his legacy. He's someone that I feel very strongly about should not be forgotten.
And I'm happy. We mentioned that earlier, that he is one of the great pioneers in music and in disco. And I'm so happy that you brought him up again. And I passed his, the SoundCloud thing around to a bunch of friends, and they just
thank you.
They wrote back to me and said, Felipe, thank you. I remember all that music. Didn't know who he was, which was the other beautiful thing, that they did.
I've been putting my energy into that, and I don't feel like it is complete, but I certainly felt that it was complete enough to launch. And like every good website, like every good page, yes, it's predominantly legacy, but I hope to keep it alive. I hope to add new content. I hope to, add little tidbits from various things that I have as I go through some of the music, post different bits of music. There's still a bit that I have to work out. The record store in Berlin that did this SoundCloud broadcast with me, Sound Metaphors, designed 2 T-shirts for Roy's birthday, which they offered on their site, and I have links to it from my site. So if people want to visit www.roythode.com, that's ROYTHODE.com, then they can just keep checking in periodically. It's a work in progress. I've become totally immersed in the importance of historical accuracy. And it's become a bit of a passionate drive for me. I was on the board for a few years of the Fire Island Pines Historical Preservation Society. And we did a few things out there, and it's just very important. And so I think that's kind of where the universe has been pushing me. You had mentioned before, brought up MTV and Palladium, and I think I switched the subject. My first job, my first day of work there, was the breakdown after the MTV Music Awards where Tina performed. So what was that? The
glamorous job.
I think the second year of MTV. It wasn't glamorous, but boy, I learned an amazing amount. And you have to get that I did not go to theater school. I did not have a background.
No, but the thing is that because you were around the talented people that were doing it, and you were right there at the right place at the right time, just like we collided and we met and we ended up living together, and we were very young. We were like 21, 20, 21, so look at us reflecting and going back in our lives and the things that we've done. Your love for what you started to do in lighting, it just took you over.
It took a life of its own. And if you look at my time in New York in the 70s, I was immersed in starting my career, which was in the music business. I moved to New York with aspirations to be a songwriter and a producer and a musician, and I turned into a bit of a producer with the disco world, and all of a sudden lighting came into play, and that I enjoyed. I was very lucky to be in the right place.
You were at the right place at the right time.
But I also had a lot of people who were willing to teach me. And I learned to be a technician, and technically to install and wire and be an electrician and all of that. I learned to operate, and that's what we were in the clubs. We were lighting operators. And then I also learned to design the lighting. So someone would say, this is the, I remember when I did the pavilion, the owners said, Marcia, we'd like you to be the technical director next summer. And I said, well, sure, that'd be great. I'd love it. It had opened. It was opened in the summer of 1980. What they told me was, and again, trial by fire, what they told me was that they had a caveat in my being the technical director the following year, that all the lights that they had used the opening season were rented. And so if I wanted to be the technical director of the lighting department, I also had to put the lights in and design a lighting system. Could I do that?
Yeah,
I thought about it, and I was very fortunate and had two amazing mentors, Mark Ackerman, who was the lighting director from the Saint, and Chip Bullock, who was the lighting director and lighting designer from the Paradise Garage.
Yeah.
They both propped me up and kicked me in the ass and said, of course you can do this, Marcia, go for it. And that became my first job as a lighting designer. And 10 years later, that career parlayed, actually 15 years later in 1999, I incorporated as Marsha Stern Lighting Design and Consulting, and I had already completed a number of jobs in Vegas at the time and in New York City where we used entertainment and automated lighting in architecture for the first time, and kind of was on the forefront of what became the architainment industry. And that was another incredible bit of opportunity. I found myself unable to do special events because of some knee surgeries. I blew my knee out skiing, and I couldn't climb ladders and do special events. And I answered an ad from an architectural firm, Johnson Schwinghammer, and they were doing this amazing installation in Las Vegas at the Caesars Forum Shops, the FAO Schwarz that they built there.
Yeah.
The 5-foot Trojan horse and all the animation and stuff.
Right, I remember.
And they opened the door and allowed me to be uber creative and use technology that had not yet been used in architecture.
Well, Marsha, you have influenced and have treated many people that, whether they knew it or not, were swayed in the colors of you with the music that DJs were playing. So as I wrap up this great interview with you, you've got to have one favorite disco memory. What? You got to have one at least.
I would say my favorite disco memory is probably one of the most special things overall in my life, memory-wise. I had the good fortune to do lights for Roy once, and it was at the Saint, and it was at a Sunday tea dance on the Ides of March. And,
very good. Wow.
And Mark Ackerman arranged that for me. He had promised me earlier that year, Marcia, you will be doing lights at the Saint. It wasn't just taking over for him when he took a break. You will have your own night. And he scheduled me to do lights with Roy. I had never worked with him before. And it was one of the most amazing nights I had ever had. And about midway through the evening, he came over to my side of the booth, because the way the Saint was set up, it was a very long booth with lighting near the door. And then the second half of the booth was all music.
Music, yeah.
And he came over to my side, and this still kind of breaks me up. And he said, I've never seen my music before. Thank you. Another thing happened that night. I had gotten into a rhythm of doing some lighting things. Repetitiously, you create a rhythm. Obviously, music has a rhythm. You pick in my case, I pick an instrument, I follow that, I highlight.
Right.
And at one point, he was mixing back and forth, as he always did, between 2 different records or 3 different records, and doubling up breaks and doing whatever he was doing. And I got into a rhythm that matched what he was doing. And then he started mixing to my rhythm. We switched roles. It was really kind of amazing. And that, I would say, I've had some pretty special moments, more than I can remember, but out of all of them, that's the one that really hits my heartstrings. And it was a very special, it was a very magical moment, and I will be forever grateful to Mr. Ackerman for arranging that for me. It was one of the most special nights of my life.
Thank you for being here tonight with me and all our your new fans and viewers. And one last time, where can everyone find you?
I think that the best place to find me these days would be at roythode.com. I'm also on Facebook. Roy Thode also has a fan page on Facebook.
Yes, I'm on that.
So we can either find me as Marsha Stern, Marshastern, on Facebook, or through roythode.com or Roy Thode's fan page. And Felipe, let me just say what an honor it was to be your guest, to be a part of the Disco Chronicles. I felt so privileged when you asked me to join you and be one of your interviewees. Just spending time with you is a delight, and you know that. But this is really very, very special, and I'm honored to be part of your show. Thank you very much.
That's twice. You almost got me now. Marsha Stern, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I love you dearly. I will be paying a visit, a drive up. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for tuning in. And thank you. And I want to thank my guest, Marsha Stern, longtime colleague, roommate, friend, everything, and just an amazing human being that truly, truly was there during disco. So we'll see you at our next show. Thank you, everyone, again. Please feel free to leave comments and questions at the Disco Chronicles. Thank you again. I'm Felipe Rose.